Hello, this is Lisa Lee, and welcome to this week's enrichment reading. We are entering some incredibly powerful territory. We're going to go into the darkness together, and I guess I'm that reader. I never really want to think of myself that way. That's not the tagline that I want under my name. But I understand, the void. We've been through the void. We have a pretty basic understanding of what the void is. And every single archetype has a shadow, has an aspect of the void, and the aspect of the void of every archetype tells us a lot about ourselves. Tells us about the world that we're in, tells us about how we operate, tells us how we can improve. It's a rich field of information. And so I want us to begin to think about what it means to enter into this series about the Dark Mother, the archetype of the Dark Mother, because we're not here to blame. We're not here to cast a harsh judgment on a population of mothers that embody these traits for one reason or another. And the reason why we enter into this space with the intention that we're not here for the kind of justice that is vengeance, but rather we're here to hear them. We're here to hear them out. Because when I sat down to get ready for this reading, and I was talking to our guides, and I was saying, how do we enter into the story of the evil queen in Snow White, or Hera, or Demeter, or what is Rapunzel's mother's name? Rapunzel's mother put her in a high tower. Does anybody remember her name? Maybe that's a clue. Athena and Medusa, Lady Tourmaline, is I think Cinderella's stepmother, right? Am I wrong, or am I is that King Arthur? We're gonna look at these fairy tales, these myths, and we're gonna look at where the archetype of mother was in shadow, because all of us, every single one of us, has an aspect of that to heal. Every single one of us has an aspect of that to heal. Your DNA is a long ladder. It's a library. It's an Akashic record. Within every trait is a story of its evolution that you breathe and move through and are and experience, and it makes up your tastes. It makes up what you like about a person and what you don't like about a person. And so when we talk about the work of excavating, and when we talk about the work of ancestry, doing ancestor work, which I think is essential, because I think it's actual self-help. I think that doing ancestor work is very effective in terms of emancipating yourself, and it's not about caretaking and slavery, although those shadow aspects are important gatekeepers to what it means to go into that wound. And so as we enter this series on the Dark Mother archetype, and we enter this with the goddesses in their ascended aspects, because they're going to teach us about themselves. And they're going to teach us about themselves by their stories. And their stories talk about not just their strengths, but their weaknesses for a very important reason. And these stories have brutality that if we're not able to look at, we stand a chance of being blindsided by in ourselves and in relationship to others. So let's get some cards on the table. I've been doing this thing lately where I speed up the shuffle, and I'm trying to remember the name, because I see her every once in a while. There's a tarot reader named Jess, right? And I will put her information, because I have cognitive issues that make my memory absolute cock-a-poopy. But she does this thing, I think she does this thing where she speeds up the shuffle. And so that's where I saw it before. But I've been doing it lately, and I think it works in terms of getting some cards on the table. So let's use the free iMovie music that's kind of goofy and fun, and do a little dance and get some cards on the table, and then very officially enter into what it means to work with our goddess mothers on emancipating ourselves from these shadows. So without further ado, okay, let's start this up. Okay, so this is there's so much here that I have to kind of even just catch my breath a little bit. But one of the first things that I saw, and I was wondering if I was going to make this series rated R, because I thought we were going to get into some territory, and I think we are going to get into some territory. And so I do want to start with a little bit of a trigger warning. that mommy issues are deep, they are dark, they are intense, and they go to the heart of who we are and to the heart of all things creation and creating and creativity. And there is a wound there that is so great. And to do honor to the ancestors that are stepping forward to tell their stories with us today, we're not going to let their voices in any way be silenced because of some arbitrary like PG-13 rules. We're gonna let it be R-rated if it needs to be, because these are their voices. And actually, I was like, my guide was like almost, I was I was compelled to say these are their fucking voices, which is why I think like we are entitled to enter this space as adults. And so I think I do want this to be a space where, you know, if you do not feel that you are an adult, I do not feel that this is a space for you, just because of your phase of development. Because we're going to be getting into territory that might make the world seem scarier if you haven't been introduced to it in this way, and there is a gentler way to be introduced to such things. So with that warning to anyone who might be under a certain level of maturity, you're going to decide, with your intuition, decide if you can do this. Also, we're going to be kicking up some wounds. We're going to be pulling on some strings. We're going to be talking about stuff that reminds us of things that happened to us when our ancestors come through and they talk about that stuff. So we want to make a holy and honored space for them to speak, because there is an element of the technology of confession, which is not about shame. It's not about blame. It's about release. It's about reconciliation. And so as we enter the topic of the mother in shadow, we're also working with our mothers in their shadows, with their shadows, with our shadows. Because we entered this week when we were in our Wednesdays, we talked about the mother wound. And this was gonna, we had it was like a storm of things that come up when we start to talk about these shadow energies of the mother, because you can't get into what it is to step into your mothering energy, step into your mothering magic, and step into your mothering power until we are able to touch these wounds and name them and emancipate ourselves and our ancestors from them. And there is work that we are having to do in that, whether we like to do it or not, because it's part of what it is to express as a human being. It's kind of heavy, I know, but I'm channeling, so I don't really take 100%, like what I'm going to let it come through as it does. But the mother is a martyr in a lot of ways. And there's like this quality of like the liminal space of captivity that is where she has been for thousands of years. There is nothing about the way that you have evolved as a species with both the divine masculine and divine feminine aspects within your DNA, in your lineage, in your codes. Because even as we are able to emancipate ourselves from the rigid confines of this coding, it's there to reckon with. Because your genes, each and every one of them, as they express through you, have had a hero's journey experience in one way or another. It's just, you were warrior. Warrior is in there. Warrior expressed through you in many, many lifetimes. You were sent to war at 12, 13, 14 years old. And you know what happens when you're on a ship with a group of men who have been conditioned to sociopathy for 2 years before you even get to shore. If you are taken to war at 12 or 13, do you know what that hero's journey entails? So when we talk about entering the shadows with with these archetypal structures and with our own ladder, our DNA ladder of information that informs the way that we fear, what are our phobias, like what snake were we exposed to 100 times that has us fearing a certain thing in a certain kind of way. And so like we emancipate ourselves when we go into these stories and we have these revelations. But in the same way that we have been the warrior, and that is part of the coding that we have to attend to when we transform ourselves, we've also been the mother in many, many, many instances, in many, many lifetimes. You have been in a situation where growing inside you is something that you love so much and need so much and want so much, or are being compelled to give life to, one or the other. And in that experience, you have to reckon with the very real possibility that your lifespan within 9 months' time could be over as a result of this calling, the call into the wild, the hero's journey, what's calling you. It's the, the adventure. No, you have a gun to your head. You're going to love it more than anything you've ever loved. It might get taken away from you. It might die, and it might kill you. But this is the process that you're in, and you have to find a way to move through this. And you have to find a way to emancipate yourself from every fear that you could possibly hold about the process of bringing life and nurturing life, yours included, into the world, and holding it and handling it and managing it. This shit is encoded deep in you, no matter where you are on that ladder of like gender roles. That stuff is coalescing, that stuff is in conversation, that stuff moves through us in jolts and bolts. It also moves through us when we pick each other up, when we pick ourselves up. It's so when we enter into this place with these energies, there's a lot to discover. There's a lot to be open to, and there's a lot that we all hold, no matter where we find ourselves in the story. And so we're going to enter the archetype where we are with the energy of Mother, and this is going to be complicated minefield. Because the Shadow Mother is a complicated minefield, because there is no greater betrayal. There is no deeper betrayal, and there's no deeper wound than the wound that is inflicted by the shadow of the mother. And so that's the sacred scar that everyone bears it. I don't know where I'm seeing this vision from, and it's got to be from something, because it looks like a scripture or something. It has is there like I'm seeing a mythology or a story where someone strikes the baby on the head? They strike this mark on the child. It's like this neglect, this wound of the mother that we all carry. It's like a tattoo. Like we are struck with it. And so we enter the wound of the mother, and we begin to look at the wound of the mother through the ways that this wound expresses itself in stories. And this is going to be an ordeal. But I think that there's something so beautiful to be had here. So let me kind of get my bearings a little bit. Let me call on the ascended ancestors and the ascended guides and the ascended mothers to begin to open this wound. Let's begin to look at it, to look at the bushfires. Time to share. So we all hold these things within us. That's the Three of Swords here. This is the broken heart. So let's open on this broken heart thing here with the Seven of Wands defense. And let's look at the divine feminine and the aspect of mother and the aspect of shadow. And the first thing that we're always going to see is, when we think about, let's think about Snow White. And the first thing that I saw when I glanced at Snow White was an untold part of the story. Whenever we disengaged the loop story structure, like my guides have been showing me this too. Oh God, they're stopping me from talking for some reason. There are sacred things that will wait, and I'm just gonna have to be cool with that. I can't share that yet. We've been working on this. We've been talking about weaving spells, and there's a weaving spell that has certain features. And if you don't want to go there before your time, because you can get stuck in it, and that's bad. So we're not gonna, like, for some reason, we're in weird territory, and I kind of have to orient myself again. I got to start over. Take a deep breath. I'm used to just letting it flow, but this is tricky. This is tricky. It's all right. Let's look at Snow White from a different perspective. Let's take the story from a different place. Snow White is a girl who is born with such an immaculate beauty, and that immaculate beauty that she's born with is an extension of her mother, and her mother represents the love that her father once held, and she is like this living representation of this beauty, of this marriage that happened before Snow White was born. It's a love story that she is the living representative of, and she is beautiful. She's a beautiful creature. But what's interesting about Snow White, and when I saw that I thought was really powerful, was she is cast out and she is neglected and she's forced to live as a domestic servant. And if we're being realistic, other type of servant to 7 men. 7 men in the forest. 7 bears in the wood who found this 12-year-old impeccable, transcendently beautiful, angelic creature and said, you know what? You're good for cooking, cleaning, singing, and probably some other things because we're grumpy. You know, sometimes we're happy, we need mothering. So Snow White, before she was even able to conceive of what it is to be who she is cast into this slavery where she's mothering these 7 men. And what is being channeled in to her experience as a little girl in this position is that and this is a mirroring that happens. Her early mirroring is not coming from a mother. Her early mirroring is coming from these men. And so we can begin to see this distortion take root when, in the absence of the love of a mother who loves her daughter and is mirroring her and saying, look at your beauty, when you shine radiantly, when you make a mess on the floor because you love to play with color, and I love the way that you express without regard for keeping the colors and the lines, and that you bring art everywhere you go. And then the daughter sees her beauty and she expresses again and again and again in this way that allows her to find herself in her natural, authentic whole thing. That's what a mother is doing when she's mothering. In the absence of that, you have conditioning. And conditioning is very different. And especially if you have conditioning from 7 hungry, enslaving men living in the forest who need their needs fulfilled. And here comes along a little girl, and you know what her life, what is the thing that her life depends on? What does her life depend on more than anything else? What is that 12-year-old little girl in that forest with 7 hungry men? What does her life depend on the most? What is the magic that she needs to survive more than anything else? Her desirability, her beauty. That is going to make the impact of the abuse she suffers softer. That means that she will be treated with the grace of something that is held, that you don't want to break it. So she has to embody this strength in order not to be broken. And she'll still be broken. And she'll have to exist in a way that's secret, even to herself, so that her own beauty can't show. Because if it shows too bright, it threatens her ability to protect herself. So who does Snow White become in the absence of the reflection of a mother, only finding herself safe, valued, and even treated with kindness and tenderness because of something that she provides in the way of song, in the way of beauty, in the way of harmony in the home? And she has denied herself, and she has denied her knowing, and she has denied what it means to grow into an adult. And she is kept small, and she is kept a child, and she is forced to stay this way. She becomes the mother who consults the mirror on the wall every single day and says, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of all? Why is she asking the question, who is the fairest of all? She's asking the question, who is the fairest of all? Because whether she is treated with brutality or as something that you don't want to break depends on the answer being, you are the fairest. And so this is where we can become the things that destroy us. And when we enter into the archetype of the dark mother, we are looking at the aspects of self that can destroy us. But when we look past blame, when we look past anger, when we look past the indignation, what we find is a survival strategy, a tactic that now written on our ladder of DNA that informs our every expression, what we withhold and what we offer, and to whom and why. We have to look at this story for real and see that slavery is at the heart of it in a lot of ways, and that all of these stories do come down to that in one way or another. And that when we encounter slavery, it's about having the right respect for all of the ancestors who endured it. And that's going to be part of what we look at when we look at, you know, the Dark Mother, because when we look at something like Athena and Medusa, and, you know, Medusa was Athena's adherent. If you've ever given your life to another, if you've ever laid down your life, if you would ever bore yourself open, if you've ever gone into the deepest womb of intimacy with another and felt that in this place you were safe because this was a goddess and this is a goddess that you gave yourself to and you gave yourself to completely, and the exchange of love there was immaculate, and you were a part of her and you were within the womb of her temple. And because in the womb of her temple you were violated by Poseidon and you were raped against your will, in Athena's rage and Athena's anger, she made it so that you would have solitary confinement and be repulsive and turn everything that looked at you into something that you could not gain softness from. That is the story of an enslaved girl who gave everything to a goddess and became the wound itself, hidden in an expression that never offered for another experience. We have to look at the truth of these things because they exist in the stories that we have been exposed to in the course of our evolution in one way or another, either as a victim or perpetrator, and we can't just leave that stuff unspoken. Because then we have patterns in place that we don't understand and that persist long after the reasoning has come and told us how to emancipate ourselves. And so when we look at this wound, this heartbreak, this Three of Swords experience of the shadow of the envious queen, we also have to look at the wound of the girl who was cast into a forest because of her beauty. And what became her strength also became her destroyer. And in becoming her destroyer, she became dependent on it. And it's a false story of love. It's a false, bowing down to something that will never heal if you keep going in the mirror every single day and saying, am I beautiful enough to be treated softly and with kindness? Because let's face it, the price, that you pay for not meeting some standard of an appearance that, pleases, that is in compliance with offering pleasure to another, there's a punishment. And so part of this series is sort of looking at this stuff and looking at the stuff inside of us and say, do I look at the mirror at any point and demand of myself a supremacy? Am I doing that? Am I doing that every single time I look at myself? Is it possible that every single time I look at myself, I'm making these demands of the mirror and saying, mirror, mirror, what do I look like right now? Where do I compare in the land? Can I go outside like this and be treated with kindness and softness? Or do I have to do something to show my compliance so that I have mercy to move through the world without scorn? We do that to ourselves. We do that to each other when we look at somebody who is unshowered and scorn and walk to the other side of the street. And some of this has to happen. There is a part of this that is about, being confronted by the things that we wish we didn't see in others. That's not a confrontation that we can necessarily have with that individual or with that space. And that's something that we're going to work on, because sometimes that confrontation is meant to be had with self, because the way that you go about attending to that is it's tricky, and so when we talk about these things and we talk about how we apply them to life, that's going to be a certain transference that we're going to be aware of caring for ourselves in, because the presence of the Dark Mother in the world and the presence of the Dark Mother, the shadow aspect of the mother in every man, woman, and child is something that we want to be aware of. And I think that might shock people. I think we might be in a place of having shocked the system. When I say the presence of the shadow of the Dark Mother is in everyone, including every child, one of the reasons why it's so hard to get into this topic and look at this topic and enter into this space is because we are conditioned at every juncture of the ladder with a dogma and an indoctrination that says, if we see the if we see the Dark Mother, she is something of the shadows. She's not something that is in ourselves. She's not something that we bring to the light of day. She's not an experience that we're allowed to have as part of who we are so that we can heal this part of ourselves. It's something that we have to scapegoat. We have to find that example of the failed shadow mother in the world in order to distinguish what we're not, and in that we don't heal her. In that we do not heal her, and she does live in each and every one of us, because every juncture of that ladder of DNA holds victim, perpetrator, 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 all the way up the ladder. All the way up the ladder, because that is the war god's world, because that is the nature of hierarchy, because that's the nature of slave and master. It's just the worldview we've been living under, which means that we have to emancipate ourselves manually. And this is going to be a process. We have to be aware of the fact that these impulses exist within us. And so when we look at this, and we look at Snow White, and we look at this conditioning, and we say, wait a minute, when I look in the mirror, I'm well, this defense is here. I take this defense with me. The way, what does it mean to have a relationship with our inner beauty, and to shift back into that warm, holy, beautiful place with the Divine Mother? What is it to have a relationship with our inner beauty that sees the beauty in our messy, fuzzy, morning, pillow face, into sauntering into the living room, unkempt, unkempt. Who among us has not seen what it means to, a 2-year-old walking into the middle of a room looks like the same thing as a 40-year-old walking into the middle of a room, at 6 a.m. That hair, that fuzzy, but you're able to look at one with love and the other with scorn, and that's a conditioning that takes place that we want undone. And so we have to forgive this, and even in our mothers. Our mothers who taught us the most important thing was using the weapon of our physical performance, or they scorned us and they punished us because they knew that the world would scorn us and punish us. So if they did it first, we would be conditioned for it, because we would be experiencing it in the world, because we can't meet the standards, so we better be ready for what's coming. And so a lot of times that scorn starts in the home, and we don't know why, but it's this epigenetic conditioning that says, I better teach you how to defend yourself here. I better break this hope you have here, because it'll be easier if you can blame me later than think it's you, when it happens over and over and over and over and over again in a system that is designed to defeat you at this access of your own sense of your own beauty, because it behooves the system for you to be in a place of comparison and compliance. And so we have to look at the system when we look at our mothers. We have to look at the system when we look at each other. And we have to take the scorn, not just from how we look at ourselves in the mirror and we're like, I can't go to the grocery store because they're going to treat me like I'm wearing my failure. What the hell is that? Is a 2-year-old wearing their failure when they have a fuzzy head because it's at 6 a.m, everybody else had to get to school, and now it's noon, and is that person getting scorn? Why did you have to do that half an hour of labor? Because in the supermarket, somebody is going to scorn you for failing to rank and file, come into order before you leave the house. What the hell is that? What is that? What is that? If we can't forgive our mothers and see these things at the same time. If we don't approach forgiving our mothers, we're not going to see the ridiculousness of the situation and be able to have that revelation and say, you know what? You're right. I perform this ritual in the mirror where I tell myself to come into order so that I can rank and file, place myself, and defend myself against the accusations that I have failed and that I'm wearing it because it's noon and I look like I did when I woke up. But that's kind of where the forgiveness and the dance of it comes in, and the strength of it comes in, and the emancipation of it comes in when we tell the story of Snow White in the right fucking way. We're saying, Snow White, was this beautiful girl, and every time her stepmother saw her, she was reminded of a love that existed for somebody that was not her, because this stepmother was not getting that love. This stepmother was getting a cruel, cold operator, and no one knew that this cruel, cold operator was in operation except her, because her proximity to power meant that she had to shield everybody else from his venom so that he would look just and kind, which means that she had to absorb his cruelty and negotiate and do the labor of being his, not just his mistress, but his PR person, so that the entire unit could continue to thrive. Because without his image being upheld, nobody was going to have food on the table. And so it was her job to conceal all his darkness. But he didn't love her. He loved his daughter, though. He loved his daughter. He loved his daughter, and his daughter got that look, that softness, that kindness. His daughter was like his best friend. His daughter was his confidant. She was the only creature in the world that he trusted. She was the only love that he knew that didn't have a price. And this queen that was living with him, all she knew of him was his cruelty. And so she did hate this daughter, because this daughter didn't care that she was hit and beaten. And she would be beaten the night before, and this daughter in the morning would be laughing with her father. And so the dark mother existed in this way, in this child, in the form of innocence. And when we talk about what privilege is, what we are always saying is blindness, 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 blindness. Jesus was talking about privilege when he said the words blindness. We have a different spin. But if we can channel the ancients, if we listen to the way that they use language, if we understand the song of what they're saying, we know that when Jesus said the blind, the blind, the blind, he said the privileged, the privileged, the privileged. And what Jesus understood about the blind and the privileged was that this little girl, who was the apple of her father's eye, because she posed no threat and her beauty did not cost him his life going into battle to defend it. Her beauty was not something that was a forged agreement that he had to participate in the bedroom at the most intimate level, so that war and sex were one. The impact of what hit the daughter was the father's cruelty. But it took a roundabout way to get there. And it took a roundabout way to get there in the form of the stepmother. And so every single time the stepmother saw the mirroring between the king and his beautiful daughter, every time she saw this, her deprivation, her hunger, she watched them eat full meals of joy every morning while she starved day after day after day after day, and no one regarded her with so much as an ounce of compassion. And yet she had to put on a performance that said, this man is worthy of being king. And we're going to get into the dark father at a certain point, but we're in the dark mother, because the dark mother said to herself, fuck this little bitch and fuck my life. And fuck the part of me that was once her, that had hoped that someone would look at me that way, and had hoped that I would be able to have that experience of being valued, of having my right to be treated without violence, not violated. And so she did something cruel. She enacted a violence. She took the power that she had and she used it. And so there's no excuse for what she then did. There's no excuse for what she then did. She took an 8-year-old, I think more probably closer to 10, and she put her out in the forest. And she said, kill this fucking girl. She hired someone. She said, take her for a walk with her laughing face and her cruelty in my eyes. Every single time I have to sit there and starve and get not even so much as a crumb, I'm going to die if nothing feeds me. I cannot uphold this performance. Something has to give. I can't look at this anymore. And because there was a powerlessness so great and power tasted so good, that to just get rid of this would be what she needed to hurt him right, to show him what pain meant, to show him that he couldn't do this to her day after day. And guess what? Snow White thrown out into that forest, if it weren't for something that she gave that huntsman that was of value to him, that he didn't want to destroy, she would not have survived. And so beauty became this currency of survival and cruelty. So that to express beauty was also to be subject to violence. Because if it didn't happen right away, it was gonna happen. Because the way that things were set up, it just isn't safe to express beauty, authentic beauty, in the form of something that is ineffable, that cannot be taken from you because it exists when you are born and it doesn't diminish with time. That is a lie. It doesn't diminish with age. That is a lie. Your worthiness to be taken care of does not go away when you become of age to be a soldier and be sent to war and the labor of upholding another man's kingdom with your life. Or the labor of giving your life to provide more slaves. Do we understand that at the center of all of this is a demand for a sacrifice, a life sacrifice, a blood sacrifice? This is a God, a war God, that demands that you sacrifice yourself, a blood sacrifice. And so at the heart of this is a need to stop everything and decide that the structure is not working for anybody. And we already know that, but at the heart of who we are, when we regard expressing beauty, when we regard what it is to have beauty, when we regard what it is to step into the world with beauty, the story that is true is not that all of the elves fall in love, or are they elves? It's not dwarves. It's not that all of the dwarves fall in love with Snow White and she's so pretty and her life is such magical and look at the birds as they twiddle. You know what I mean? This is not her experience. I'm sorry. If we're able to tell the real story because there is wisdom in it, and our mothers left us this wisdom, they did it on purpose. They knew that we were going to need it. Then what we're going to say is Snow White's beauty was her greatest strength and her greatest weakness. It would be her destroyer if it is not her emancipator. If she does not learn how to own it as her own power, it's going to destroy her. That's the heart of the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And she did not go dancing into a forest. When they speak of the fruit and the song and the domestic labor, the subtext under that story that was told over and over and over and over and over again, that is printed on our Jacob's ladder of DNA, because when we saw the story, we recognized it from the hundreds of years of hearing it, and it may have had different characters in a different place, but it was a story structure that played itself over and over and over and over and over again. The girl who was cast out because of her beauty, and the queen who wanted to destroy her to take it. There's a story underneath that story that when we get into it and we're honest about ourselves, that what is at the heart of this is neglect and deprivation and the cruelty we are willing to endure on behalf of a story that we are all living out every single time you get in front of the mirror and say, mirror, mirror on the wall, am I worthy of the supermarket? I'm so fucking tired. Do I have to do my hair and put on some makeup? And that's not saying you don't want to put makeup on and do your hair, because adoring yourself and adorning yourself and bringing yourself into the bounty of life and bringing color and bringing art and everywhere you go, that's a very different process than I have to look like I am in order, or I'm wearing my failure, and I'm out of rank, and I'm out of file, and I will be punished, and they will be cruel to me, and they will scorn me. And I will be looked at like I am garbage because I'm wearing garbage because I didn't put on my uniform of I'm competent and functional and great. Things are good. Like, right? So, and I want us to be able to like not be good, because in the dark, in the shadows is the part of us that doesn't get to fucking like just be angry that we're in a system where that those that are rewarded are being set up. They're young and they're being set up that they're being set up to be tools of destruction, and they don't see it. You know, like Snow White is an example not of something so beautiful and valuable and oh my no, she is her parents, like she symbolizes the beauty of their love in that story. But she also symbolizes the death of her mother. And she also symbolizes the death of the woman who's come to replace her, who can never replace her and should not be put in that position in the first place. And it also symbolizes the king who cannot love somebody who he is contracted to share a bed with, because it's a type of giving of his body that is demanded in the way of a treaty, wherein he has to produce from this moment an army for himself, his laborers. And this is not giving of his body for love. This is a Faustian bargain. So there's no one actually winning in the story of shadows. In the story of shadows, there's no love. There's something else that masquerades as love, and it's called false power. And so proximity to power becomes the prize. Proximity to the mad king, the war god, the vicious ruler, that becomes love. That becomes value. That becomes what sparks joy in the DNA ladder of survival under extreme conditions. Frogs that are born at the bottom of a cave where sunlight never reaches glow in the dark. They learn to glow in the dark. They evolve to glow in the dark. And so it's the labyrinth that we are in that provides these defining. Yeah, I'm hearing the. I like that the. What is it? The ice cream truck is rolling through. I'm so glad that that's breaking this up. It's getting a little bit heavy here. It's getting a little heavy. We do need to lighten it up a little bit with that energy of the ice cream truck coming through. Because when I was shuffling these cards out, I was getting, I don't even think I've looked at the cards yet, I've been channeling. So I was getting, it was the Revolution song. When you hear na 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 na. And it was interesting to me that like our ancestors, and I was surrounded by these beautiful, amazing, like archetypal women, and they were humming. I don't even really, I think it's like from Les Mis, right? It's the song of revolution. And it's almost like telling our truth is the revolution. The revolution we need is when we're like, I gave nothing, and I don't even feel like I belong in my own house, and nobody even likes me. You know what I mean? Like we're meant to have a different conversation with the experiences that we're having that are outside of the picture that we have to comply in providing. This emancipation comes when we're looking at Snow White, and we're not looking at her as an example of purity and beauty, but we're looking at her as what the Snow Queen, what her mother, what the stepmother, she's going to have two roads, that beautiful angel. She's going to either be enslaved to providing beauty and pleasure, or enslaved to providing life that might cost her life. She's not having a good future. Nowhere that she goes is a good story. She's going to become the queen that is sending her out into the forest. And at the heart of that story for each and every one of us is the moment when we sent our young selves that were beautiful away from us and we said, we can't stand your beauty. Your beauty has no place here. It's not being appreciated. It's not safe here. You're going to have to kill your beauty in order to climb this fucking ladder, get this job done, get through this life, because the closest thing to love that you can hope for is false power, proximity to power, comparison. How many of you sent your own Snow White into the forest to get slaughtered because it was a better path than the one that you saw? And letting her sit there and get all that attention. Because there's something else out there, wasn't there? There was the huntsman. Every juncture of the story tells us something about what we do in our own development when confronted by forces that want to consume our beauty, forces that are competing with our beauty, forces that are telling us that our beauty should be a standard when that doesn't make any sense. Because our beauty is 6 o'clock in the morning with a fuzzy head and a pillow puffy face. That's what our beauty is. Every single time, every single day. When someone falls in love with you, you know what the first thing that they see and their heart opens and it expands? True love happens at 6 o'clock in the morning when you are looking an absolute mess, because that is the face of beauty. The face of beauty isn't the presentation. The presentation gets dismissed over and over and over and over and over again. But we don't present with our highest qualities. We don't present with our vulnerability. We don't present with bedhead, even though that is what the lover falls in love with. It is not the supermarket pretty version that sells us to the other, and we shouldn't be selling ourselves to begin with. But when we think about the distortion here, and we are told to send our inner beauty out into the forest and adopt something that looks like power when we present ourselves like in this way, because we're showing that we are in order. We are in order for the king. We are in rank and file. We are finding our position of power in proximity to managing that structure. And we are telling our daughters, and we're telling, I think, this is one of the things that, we have to go into this dark mother territory and ask ourselves, like, what are we telling our daughters about their beauty? Are we telling them this 9 of Pentacles story that, yes, it's your armor, it's your strength, but it's also your greatest weakness. So learn how to use this properly. Learn from the dark mother. And instead of sending yourself out into the forest to just be buried forever, dead as a doornail, make sure you send yourself into that forest with an aspect of yourself that is going to defend you, that is going to lie for you, that is going to see the value of your beauty and set you free. And so the huntsman represents something within us as well, just as the dark mother does, just as Snow White does, because Snow White's entire life and light revolves around the light that is given to her from her father, the king. It's not coming from other places. I mean, maybe the birds and the singing of the, deer, some rabbits fluttering about, She gets some attention from those forest creatures, but where is the sun that shines? Where is it? Where is she orbiting around? The only place where she's getting sustenance, because he has created a fortress of solitude around her in the way that he is cruel to everybody else. So they don't want this creature that is not subject to the cruelty of that king on parade in their deprivation. So she's not getting close to anybody. It's not even safe. If anyone was to get too close to her and stir his rage, so her son and everything about her sustenance is coming from one source, which means mirror, mirror on the wall. What is she dependent on? As a kid, nothing. But as she gets older, that's going to become her only currency for such a long time in that DNA ladder that we have to talk about what it means to embody the mother from the perspectives that came before us. And ask ourselves, what stories play themselves out in the way that we instruct ourselves and teach ourselves and care for ourselves? Because the way that you care for your body, the way that you care for yourself, that's everything to do. Like this is everything. Your body and your mother, same. So the aspect of you that mothers, the aspects of you that is mothering, the aspect of you that is a mother, and I don't care what sex you are assigned, because you have it in you as mother. That energy of mother, where is it? What is it doing? How hard is it to take care of yourself? What is the uphill battle there? Do you have to go to war to take care of yourself? Do you actually have to battle to let her express? I mean, some of you are valiant warriors for the mother, and you don't even realize just how incredible you are in being the huntsman that survives her in you, that keeps her preserved in you. What part of you is the huntsman? Let's get some cards on that. Because that Nine of Pentacles, that says, I stand in my power. My beauty is my greatest strength. And I am not going to let it be my destruction, because I'm going to know it. It is going to know me. We are going to be kin to each other. We are going to be allies. I'm not going to send it out into the forest. I'm not going to not know my own voice. I'm not going to lose touch with my intuition. What our ancestors say, when our ancestors say the word intuition, they always say, it's not even say, because I'm translating symbols. The symbol for intuition, galactically, as far as I can tell, is a conjunction of two essences. And the symbol for intuition is with mother. With mother, intuition. Same. Your intuition is when you are able to be with mother. When mother has hurt us, when we have been hurt by mother, it is very hard to be with mother. And so this fissure that goes deep, this dark mother, this fissure that goes deep, this is not just the sending part of ourselves out into the forest defenseless. It is also the part of ourselves that is in the forest defenseless, and our lives dependent on this random huntsman. And I guess we're wondering at a certain point out there in the forest, like, how are we going to survive this huntsman? Snow White's seen him around the court. She knows that he's the one that talks to the stepmother, that wounds her with every glance. And she doesn't understand why this woman wounds her with every glance. This doesn't make any sense. Snow White is laughing. She is in joy. She is putting on a performance. And then she looks at her stepmother, and her stepmother says, cringe, cringe, cringe. What is the word cringe? Stepmother. And I don't mean like a real stepmother that's good. I mean like in the archetypal structure of the shadow of that energy is, if you express yourself, it is disgusting. It disgusts me to see you express yourself unguarded. You're going to get punished for that. That's the envy. That is what cringe and envy are the same thing. Did you know that? Bet you didn't know that. Somebody dares to express themselves unguarded. How cringe. You're not showing up in order. You're in disorder in public. You're not rank and file. You're not ranked. You're not ranking yourself. You're failing. You're falling behind. You're not a good soldier. You're not holding your rank and your spot and your soldier, and you're gonna be here, and you're gonna march forward, upward mobility, more money. Do you see like how we're just doing it in a different way? We're still being soldiers about this whole thing. Because we have to contend with the systems and the money and we have to deal with it. We have to deal with it. But at the same time, if we can disqualify it and say, and be the rebel, the drunk rebel in the ranks. And I'm not saying be drunk. The archetype of the trickster god then becomes very useful when you have to be in an office space and everything depends on you not getting all of your life force siphoned by the bullshittery. Suddenly you're just gonna show up with minimal physical gorgeousness, effort. You're gonna be the secret librarian that does the minimal to provide that she is in compliance with rank and order, but you're not going to ever look at yourself in the mirror and condemn yourself. That trickster says, I'll use the mask, but I am not going to subject myself to the cruelty of the slave master that would tell me that my most beautiful self is not at 6 o'clock in the morning when I am absolutely my cutest, truest, fluffy head, pillow puffy face. That is the face of a mother. And when a child looks at its mother, it is not looking for that mother, to take the form of beauty in a magazine. No, it's looking, an infant is just looking for sustenance and nourishing. And guess what? That's what we want from each other. We don't want each other's admiration and high regard. We want to nurture and be nurtured. We want a place to express our love. And we want a place where that expression of love will be met by an expression of love. That is the bottom. That is the everything. That is the all. That is what you want. If you are swimming and I don't know what I want, I don't know what my desires are, oh my gosh, I can't, it's been beaten out of me. No, you want a place to express your love. And you want a place where that expression is met with the expression of love. And you want that to be an ongoing part of a supporting, growing experience of the lifespan that you're in. That's what you want. That's what we want. So what are we doing with the way that we talk to ourselves when we glance at the mirror? We are embodying the dark mother, and it's very painful, and it's unnecessary because it's not true. And so when we look at the story and we say to ourselves, this story is telling me something that has such a firm grip on me, that is such a place of captivity, then I enact this charade of coming into rank and file. And it's not even just about divine feminine aspects of expression. This is about every divine aspect of expression is coming into rank and file in the way that they perform themselves. For what purpose? Because you are meant to express yourself and perform yourself. This is what the zest and the spice and the glory and the yes and the go and the do and the sparkles of life are all about. You are meant to get up in the morning and say, what color is my fuzzy head going to be adorned with? And how do I want to paint and play and do and put the puzzle pieces of these things together? And now I have a presentation of an art project of my outfit that I really like, because look at how sparkles show that I like sparkles. And if you like sparkles, we sparkle more. We expand the sparkle. That's expression. And that should be happening no matter what role you are choosing to step into and express and experience and grow with. These are like partnerships. These are dating. We're not even going to stay with our roles most of the time, because they expand on themselves. They become something different. They grow. We have a sense of ourselves that is not held like that when we are a mother, when we're mothering ourselves, when our relationship with our mother is healthy, and our inner mother, when that relationship is healthy, it's generative, it's creativity, it's what do you want to eat? Pancakes and chicken McNuggets. Why do you want to eat pancakes and chicken McNuggets? Because I feel safe with pancakes and chicken and McNuggets. I know that pancakes and chicken McNuggets is not going to challenge me, and I will have to eat something that isn't like what I'm hungry for. Okay, well, the mothering that comes in there, that creativity, is like, what if we made pancakes and chicken McNuggets with chickpeas and spinach, and we brought in the alchemy of some coconut. Now we're playing, now we're getting into it, now we're making something special. Now the experience of life and what it is to have a quality of life is very different than I gotta eat the salad, because I do not want to be falling apart. People are gonna look at me like I just cannot, like they're gonna see that I'm just like losing it at the edges. I am, they're gonna find me and they're gonna put me and they're gonna rank me and I'm gonna have to deal with the consequences of my falling out of order. Falling out of order and the punishment. Ooh, the punishment. So where are we with the Dark Mother? What is she doing to you? What is she doing to you with this Nine of Cups? Look at you, Nine of Cups, Nine of Pentacles. Now we're going to bring in this love. Because when we think about the, and did we even like look at the cards? Did we even glance at them? Holy crap, it's been an hour. See, when I'm channeling, boom, I burped. Like when I'm channeling, the first thing that I lose is time. I lose time completely. That's why these are always really long. But with your truth is powerful and going deep and gifts of the lonely path, when we can look at these stories, and instead of looking at these stories and saying, I am going to ally with the character of Snow White and be the beauty that is then sheltered and treated kind because when I sing and bring my labor, like we're not going to do that. We're not going to ally with that aspect of the story and forsake the rest because that's evil. That's no good. How dare she? Ew. Look at her. Like, I don't have those thoughts. Yeah. No. Like, do you see, like, I don't know whose mom just channeled through me. Somebody, like, did a good job there. But, like, there's something about what we do to ourselves and what we do to each other that if we look at these stories and we see ourselves not in the story as just the one beautiful perfect and that's all we're going to perform and that's all we're going to even admit to ourselves, but if we actually look at the story and say, you know who the queen is? The queen is who Snow White becomes. The queen who casts Snow White out into the forest to be killed by the huntsman is who Snow White becomes. And in order for that queen to become the heartless slave of the mirror, she has to kill the part of her that was once Snow White. When every single one of these stories about the Dark Mother features you and your process, Judgment Day, to hurt us so that we can be ashamed and guilty? No, so we can set ourselves free. So that when you get up in the morning and you look at yourself in the mirror, you say, I will never again be a slave to that motherfucker. I am cutest at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I will come into compliance for the purpose of my own magical trickster energy where I'm not going to let anybody know where I am in my progress and where I am in my emancipation, because my emancipation with the mirror is complete and there is nobody who can look at me and shame me and compare themselves to me and make me feel yucky and dirty and shitty about myself because I'm not making some grade, because I am free with the mirror. That's what we're doing with our mothering energy. Because that Nine of Cups, you are perfect. You are a perfect creation. You want to know something I learned with this Page of Cups? You want to know something I learned this week that our guides are kind of bringing my attention to here? I'm going to tell you a little secret about yourself. Maybe you didn't know this. Maybe you did. It is the egg that chooses the sperm. They did all the research, they did all the studies, they computed and they compulated and they came to conclusions, and they discovered that in the fertilization process, that it is not the fastest sperm and it is not the first sperm, it is not the fittest sperm that the egg chooses. It is the sperm that is in resonance with her that she chooses. And you know what happens to all the other sperms that she doesn't choose? She chops their heads off. That egg. That egg is the intelligence that chooses. And you were chosen to exemplify a part of her dream, to bring an aspect into this world to heal herself with, because she wanted to see your beauty reflected back at her, because it was her beauty and it had gone unloved and unrecognized, and she knows what that beauty means, and she's going to make sure that this time those traits are passed forward and they make themselves known, even if they have to spend their life insisting the presence of that beauty will not be mistaken again. And she chooses. That egg chooses you, and you are chosen. So the question of whether or not somebody picked you or someone's going to pick you, or are you going to be chosen, you've been chosen to exist forever as an aspect of something that wanted you to breathe and be and live and laugh and expand And so we have to tackle the stories. That's what it is to do ancestral work, is these stories play themselves out in our expression and in our experience without our even knowing it. You know, we came into this thing with Wednesdays about like shitty ancestors and what it means to have to deal with shitty ancestors. We got some shitty ancestors to deal with, and we also have to deal with what they did. Because let me tell you something. I'm about to bring some dark truth. You know, I'm not perfect at all. And like me saying that just shows what like an asshole I am, literally. Just even like that, I would even like volunteer that in the way that I did. But like, there's a lot that I hold back as a psychic. There's a lot that I do not bring to the table as a psychic, especially, you know, when I'm doing readings. There's a lot that I'm like, you know, very careful. There's rules that I have about like what I say and what I don't say. And those rules don't come because I'm some like perfect person who has perfect information. It's because I've been punished over and over and over and over and over and over again. There have been times when I have spoken the truth, where I have said, like, listen, you know, you've got some fucked up shit going on, and I'm gonna tell you about it. And that person, you know, hit back. No, I don't. I'm not ready for that. I can't look at that. I don't want to accept that. You know, seeing that is going to put me into a place I'm not feeling safe in my body or my life. You know, even something like right before the election. Yes, Trump was going to get elected. There's no way to say that. You don't say that. There are psychic things that you have to be, you know, the person who's making these calls on, like, what are you going to say? What are you not going to say? What are you are at liberty to say? And what are you not at liberty to say? And sometimes these calls are made in the shadows because we're afraid of the punishment that will come if we say things that are unacceptable. And one of the things that are unacceptable to say is that you travel with racist, sexist, like monstrous, sociopathic ancestors, because you do, because the stories that are attached to their experiences that live in that unconscious space, whether it's your unconscious mind and you're a scientific person and that's what's influencing you and you have to like work this stuff out, and, you know, or these are ancestors that are personified that are all around you in the underworld, which is the unconscious collective space. For me, it's spiritual. These are your ancestors. They need to be dealt with. They need to be called into question. They need to be brought up. We need to examine these stories, not just as Cinderella perfect, but as the witch who cursed her. And we got to look at both sides of that story. We have to look at all of these stories. We have to tell them again, and we have to tell them again with a truth that is not about I'm just gonna have to pull myself back, because there's so much here about like the scarring. They inflict these scars on each other, our melancholy guides. And so it's not just that we have rancid, nasty ancestors that we need to emancipate within ourselves, and that's just crossing them over. And this is a very simple exercise. We're not like having to fight them, you know, in the name of, and we can do that. That's useful. Sometimes we want to do that. There's different ways in which we can attend to this unconscious space, but we do take dominion over it. We are given the lifespan with the power to take dominion over these forces that move through us into our experience and express as our life. We can do a lot with that. We can emancipate ourselves with these things, and everything attached to these things that are holding us captive, or, you know, we can tell ourselves a story about our performance as like a perfect princess over and over and over again. But here's the change, and here's the change that we're bringing to it. What do I mean by your nasty ancestors are effing you up, and if you don't acknowledge it, you're gonna have, this is a problem for everybody. What is privilege? Is blindness, right? And I don't ever want to use the word privilege, because it says something that's not there. The people that I have seen that are the most hurt in this world, that are treated with the most cruelty, are also the most privileged. And we know this because, like, look how they are with each other. The fuck is that? That's the coldest, least warm, like, strategic, like, Succession. Like, I'm seeing HBO as Succession. Like, that is garbage, poopy quality of life. Are you kidding? Rancid, disgusting. Because they're blind to it. They're blind to the value of the relationships that are available to them if they stop playing a game of who's in proximity to power, why, compliance, rank and file and order and produce and uphold and contribute to the false mother's appearance when you're really just the cutest at 6 o'clock in the morning. And that's the hug you need, right? So when we talk about privilege, it's really important to call it blindness, because we wound each other with blindness. We don't usually wound each other with smugness. I'm choosing to be an asshole. No, I'm just really concerned. I'm getting some ancestors that are lining up here. We want to talk. You know, man and bear. You know, when we were talking about who would you choose in the forest, am I going to choose a bear? Am I going to choose a man? It's a stranger, right? Okay, we're going to go with bear. What does that mean? Oy, you know, that was hard for people to really think about. And a lot of people defended it. And they were like, I was taught to hunt bears by my dad. You know, and that's like, I would choose a man. That's privilege right there. Why? Because you haven't been in a position where something was eating you alive and you couldn't, it was the predator, and now you're on the floor and it's eating you, and you're experiencing what the gazelle and the lion experiences, except that you can't escape. And so you know you're not going to choose the animal that's going to do that to you, and you can't die, because the bear is going to kill you when it consumes you, but not that other thing. That's going to eat you over and over and over again. And so if your position is, your daddy taught you how to hunt bears, honey, then you are blind and you're wounding someone who's been in the position of having been devoured. And if you can't offer that courtesy, that grace, that love to somebody who's had that experience, then you're not taking responsibility for your ancestors, because they're expressing through you in a way that is wounding, because it's blind, and it's a blindness that persists unless we confront it in ourselves. I love some of your ancestors, because I gotta give credit where credit's due. I'm not channeling white energies, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that to put white energies down, because I channel white energies all the time. I am a white energy in terms of like this amorphous thing in which we call segregation in many forms and many colors. We're segregating as we walk through the world, unacknowledging the part of ourselves that is the dark mother that threw authentic beauty into the forest, because we needed to be in proximity of power to survive, because the only sustenance we've ever had were those raping dwarves that made our beauty the only thing that was going to keep us from being treated with brutality. What the fuck is that? We're not going to participate anymore. But we only do this when we acknowledge this stuff. Of course, we all have the part of us that threw ourselves into the forest. That's why whenever we see somebody expressing authentic beauty, we cringe. And we become our own executioner. Because Snow White is the dark Snow Queen mother that was once the Snow White angel. They're the same story. They're just different parts in the timeline. And that judgment is ours to make when we look at these things and we decide, how are we enacting the stories that we are participating in, and in what way, and what roles are we taking, and how can we emancipate ourselves and the ancestors who are expressing in ways that make us separate, because we're different and we're meant to be, because that range of expression, that kaleidoscope that the light shines through, is not meant to be dulled. Every unique expression is an aspect that glows. But if your light is turned off and you feel that light is turned off, then there are some ancestors that you need to take those stories out to pasture and maybe just deal with them. We're gonna have a mean ancestors group, because we need this with the King of Wands here. This War King has done a number. And when we accept that the War King has done a number on us, we can also accept that romantic relationships are fucked to high hell. Woo! Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started on the emancipation of romantic love from stories of possession. Because we are so afraid of this, because we don't want to lose control around intimacy. Spirituality is intimacy. We don't want to lose control about that either. That's why we have organized religion. We don't want to give way in our bodies at that depth, at that level, without some sort of assurances and some sort of contracts in place that we're going to be safe. But that's because there's nothing safe about any of this. And so when we have that judgment, we bring that judgment and we say, beyond the mind, the heart beats, connecting to all aspects of the mother within myself, taking responsibility for these impulses and these judgments, stopping myself when I want to say something that makes me so much stronger. I know how to slay a bear. Okay, good. Let's teach it. How do you do it, honey? How are you doing it? I want to hear about this. I want to hear about this lesson that your daddy taught you about how you emancipated yourself from the bear, because we need that. We need you. But we need you not holding it over us in some cruel blindsiding where your judgment is that you need us to be more like you because somebody ate me. I ate my whole life. They left me nothing. And that deprivation and that starving was just met with labor that I had to keep up in order to make sure that my family didn't starve. So I don't want to I don't want to rain on your parade about your skills with the bear slaying, but I could really use that information. Do you see how our ancestors are sort of channeling through me at different voices? And they're not here to condemn. Some of them are. But those condemning voices that we have to catch in ourselves, every single time I look in the mirror, envy and the spirit of envy, ooh, she comes hard at me. Ooh, I am nasty to myself. All the women in my family are like, my lineage is this Greek lineage, this evil eye. You know what the evil eye, that being responsible for my ancestors, do you know what that means for me? Being responsible for my ancestors when it comes to the energy of envy is Athena and Medusa. That means there's a part of me that when I feel like I have been wronged, I am willing to be blind to anyone's pain but my own. And I am willing to put my pain above the pain of those who have caused that pain. And I am willing to punish someone for this encounter with myself and my own fear of being violated intimately. Because you know what happened with Athena and Medusa? Medusa represents Athena's temple space. That means the part of Athena that was violated by Poseidon is a part of herself that she will never express again, and no one will ever get near her again in that way. And if they try to, she is going to turn them to stone. She is going to use the part of herself that maims to ensure that anyone who comes at her with desire gets maimed. Medusa and Athena are the same characters at different places in the timeline under that umbrella of story that tells us about these aspects of the divine. One that is the sacred sexuality that is guarded and valued, and the temple space, and it shall not be violated, and this intimacy shall not be taken, and this intimacy is mine. And when it is violated and when it is taken, it will never express again. It will turn to stone. This is all about, these stories are about us. And they're not about us positioning ourselves and finding ourselves and figuring out, oh, we're not like Athena. Mm-mm. No, we're definitely Medusa in the story, because like we would never do that to anybody else. But we also, like, we have to emancipate her because we're also like, we're the savior, right? Because Snow White and our purity. No, we're the Dark Mother. We're always both characters. We're both the perpetrator and the victim in these stories, because this is an archetypal structure that tells us about ourselves. And if we have to look away and we can't look at the part of ourselves that threw our beauty into the forest and only let it express with men, or the part of ourselves that when violated, we made it so that it never expressed again, we don't know how to feel desire. Look at the way we talk to ourselves in the mirror. Where is our pleasure? Where is our safety? Someone's grandmother from New Mexico came through. I don't know who that is. But with the 6 of coins here, she goes, where is our safety? And that's true. Where is our safety? With each other. The fuck are we doing? Judging each other at the supermarket. What the hell are we doing? What the hell are we doing? Judging each other. Why aren't we looking for each other's beauty at 6 o'clock in the morning photos? You know, get ready with me. Look at me when I first wake up. Let's talk about how like shitty it is to be in the war man's kingdom. Watch me put my mask on so that they don't torture me in there. Look, we're all stuck here together. We're all slaves with this. Like, you know, your beauty at 6 o'clock in the morning is now reflected as my beauty at 6 o'clock in the morning. And look at us all at the 6 o'clock in the morning club, showing how cute we are with puffy pillow face. Because sexuality and sexual desire and sexual intimacy lives in another category from beauty. Did you know that? Did you know that? I didn't. Somebody's ancestor just told me that right now. I'm gonna look at it later. But with this Ace of Swords, piece of truth, and this Hanged Man here in terms of like, we're stuck in the rank and file. All right, I get it. You know, if you go to the supermarket screaming like, I've given up, there's a way that looks, you know what I mean? And we do want to use our magic to conceal where we are until we're out of a war man's warfield battles. You know, like there's a safe way to work with the scar, to emancipate ourselves from the scar, to reveal an enlightenment and the otherwise captive position that allows us to be in 2 places at once. A place where we're free and a place where we're held. You know, the structures that we're in, our ancestors had no choices. There were no choices. You were born a slave, you were going to be a slave. You know, did you, like you didn't, what do you mean you don't have a single ancestor that gave a shit about their pacing when it came to learning how to read. I promise you that nobody was feeling really fucking failing the grade about their reading status because they were comparing themselves. You know, this is something that we have to think about in terms of, we think about the choices and the pressure that we put ourselves through to like make the grade. Got to make the grade, got to be at the same pace as everybody else is. That's how we know that we're okay. And if we're not okay, like this is a problem for the entire, you know, now mom has to deal with it and she's too tired. These choices are not emancipating us. They're shackling us in a lot of ways. But the paradox here is that like the slavery is just taking another form. It's a slavery that we understand as slavery as we move through it in a different way that our ancestors experienced it, because our ancestors experienced it as nature. They experienced it as the gods. They did not feel like they were failing to make the grade. The gods had decided their grade, and they were just going to honor that position in one way or another by not succumbing to their own death, you know, to their own annihilation. They were honoring the position that the gods had given them by making the most of it. But they didn't think that they were a failure because of like, they just, you know, like, this is where I'm working now. I failed. No, you were placed there. You were placed there as much as your ancestors were placed where they were placed. And when you're able to say that honestly and with your heart wide open, you can take off the freaking shackles of you're just not making the grade. You're not falling into order. You were born at the bottom of that order or at the top of that order, and there are a range of punishments that come with both positions because the whole goddamn thing is a punishment. And we have our way out. We have a door here. We have a truth. We have a turning of the wheel. We have a reconnecting with our mother and the mothering within us with these dark stories where we can bring emancipation. There are people who have done this work. We should all be doing this work. We should all be bringing our own wisdom through these stories in a new way. We should all be giving them life and a new life in a new way that emancipates them, because that's emancipating our ancestors, because all of our ancestors lived through these archetypal stories in one way or another. I guarantee you had an ancestor that was thrown into the freaking ditch by a stepmother. I guarantee it that somebody read. That's part of the story of something that travels with you. And if it travels with you thinking that your beauty is the only thing that is going to keep you alive, I can guarantee that's the voice in the mirror that says, you're not making the grade. You're not. You're out of order. you're not falling into rank. You're going to get eaten alive. Better be mean to you here at home, because they're going to punish you for that ugliness. She's not wrong. She's not wrong. But she is wrong. And it's your job to correct her. Because they are going to punish you for showing up looking like a mess. And your kids are uncapped, or you're uncapped, or like you're looking like the day that you're having, and the day that you're having is the worst, and you're crying in public, and you're too loud on the cell phone because you're talking to somebody about taxes. What? But people know you're out of order. You're out of order. You're losing it in public now. Who's not like that though? You know? How are we simultaneously judging the lady who's 3 aisles over, crying and talking too loud on the cell phone with the tax man because, like, whatever, I heard this person having a conversation. I judged them today. I'm channeling this information, but my guide who's like laughing at me is making me laugh at myself too. Who, like, we judge that person, but we are that person because everybody has that phone call at one point and they're just like, all right. You know, so whether or not you are privileged enough to have that break in public or private, you know what I mean? Like, this is where we have blindness. This is where we have our own blindness. And so, you know, when we begin to walk around the world, having emancipated our own selves from the mirror, even if we are putting on the performance so that we can, you know, put up the glamour, the magic that gets us, you know, to whatever we're working towards in the way of our goals, there's a quiet rebellion. Like, that's when I was shuffling these cards out, I was hearing like look in the fucking mirror and don't insult yourself one bit. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. Your beautiful expression should express if you're cringing, fuck that bitch because you're emancipating her. Da-da-da-da. This is a freaking effort, but we're not doing it like I have to do some self-care and some self-work. No, we're doing it like, motherfucker, don't look at me like that in the mirror. You won't do it. And this reading is an R-rated reading because we're angry and we knew it. I want you to bring that energy to your emancipation every fucking day, because it's not just you. It's the ancestors that believe that you're going to die if you don't stay, you know, mirror, mirror on the wall. Are we going to die today? Are we going to be treated with brutality or kindness? We better fix our freaking hair. What happens when you go out wearing my pajamas, and it's going to piss off the people in Walmart that comply, but it doesn't fucking matter because here I am. Like, this is what your guys are, like, this is what our moms are being like. Our moms, judgment card, our page of wands, they want you to express yourself. They want you to play. They want you to break the rules a little bit. But they also want you to know how to comply so that you can shape shift, so that you can follow rank and order. Where do you want to be? You want to be ranked up there? Okay. You don't carry any of the baggage of the drive. You gotta make sure you get the right skincare if it costs too much. You know what I mean? And I don't say that you're going to like clamp down on your expression, because sometimes skincare and dolling it up and investing in like the glory and the dignity of your personal expression when you present yourself, that's art that I would never tell you to like clamp back on. No, put more feathers in your hair. Dress it up. Dare to, you know, bring that rebellion with just a little bit of cringy behavior, because yeah, of course you're going to be laughing too loud at the water cooler or whatever, and like someone's going to cringe at you, but then you're going to be like, yep, sometimes I'll laugh too loud, and then you still bring the A game. You know, you still know when to turn on that rank and file. You still know when to do both things at once, so that you can just fuck with the system just a little bit. You know, with this adventure, you know, card on the bottom of the deck and this transformation card here, you know, this clarity, this freaking, oh my gosh, look at how mean I am to myself. Look at how mean I am to others. What is this judgment doing to any of us? I am Snow White, but I am also her evil queen mother. And I'm also the huntsman. And I'm also defending myself by creating myself in the image of something that those 7 dwarves consider mother. But it's not mother because I want to be here. It's because if I'm not protected by them, the other part of me is going to kill me. If I don't express my beauty in a way that is this kind of pleasing, then I might just threaten the whole kingdom. We have to look at this stuff, because this coldness around our hearts, this calcification on the way that we express ourselves, the way that we experience beauty, the permission to believe in our own magnificence, or is that banished into the forest? It's allowed to exist with just like the huntsman. He's cool, right? Or like, we're okay with it, but we have to have like a fan club of like hot adolescent dudes who we take care of. Like, yeah, let's do it, guys. Now we can show up. What? Bear? They taught me how to shoot him. That's who we become if we don't know that we're also like what put ourselves in a position where survival meant upholding some standard like this, because that love of the Father was the only sustenance. And if we don't see that as an insult, if we see that as an asset, then we've condemned ourselves into a loop of like false creation about what our value is. Because nobody deserves what Snow White had to bear by being the only safe place that her father could express affection. And that was a timetable. That was not going to last. That was going to hurt that child, because she has to be sold to another kingdom where she barters her flesh for her survival. And if she just happens to be sold to a kingdom where a child born of a marriage that lasted a year and was only existing in the bloom of its discovery and became an impossible standard, and the cycle repeats. And so this bushfire, this burn it all down, means we go back to all the stories with all of the shadow aspects, and we look at our moms now, and we look at our grandparents now, and we look at the way in which they were contorted, and we say, yeah, I look at myself in the mirror and I bring that evil eye every single time. And I tell myself, mirror, mirror on the wall, are we in order? Is that beauty? Is that beauty? Or do you notice something that you see in your lover at 6 o'clock in the morning when they're like, what's going on? When the first time you see your beloved sleeping, woo! Love, beauty. What is more beautiful than your beloved's sleepy face? Unarmed, trusting, peace and creation. We always see the mother's paintbrush on a sleeping face. Her love is what we see when we look at a face of somebody who is sleeping. We can see the mother loved them because that sleeping face is the face that the mother loves. And we know that whenever we see the sleeping face of somebody we love. So let's just pull back on this notion that beauty and sexual expression live together. They complement each other. They dance. They're part of our, like our guides are showing me this, it's like a nature movie. It's part of our mating dance. We just do a little dance. You know, part of our mating dance is beauty and flash and show. This is my expression. This is my glow. But it's individualized. There's no standard that any beauty can meet. There's no comparison between types and aspects of God, because they're all part of the same one. You know, all these aspects of expression, there's no hierarchy there. It's still expressing authentically, like authentically, that's the breath and the mother, the womb, the egg that chose you and said, yes, resonance. You are in resonance with life. You are in resonance with creation. You carry the assortment of traits that I want to bring into the world for healing, that I want to bring into the world for display, and that I want to see expressed with all of these other traits so that we can hopefully emancipate. and transform those things that we're not given a form to express through. And so they're going into the world. They got an arsenal. You got the warriors and you got the oracles all built in that ladder. You got the mothers. You got all these traits. You got all this alchemy. You got all this expression. How are you going to bring your mothering in and let it exist in its fullness and its power right next to your warrior? And how are these things going to produce through you? Because it's not going to look the same in everybody. Some people are going to pour this energy into offspring. Some people are going that are physical. Some people are going to pour this energy into offspring that are spiritual. Some people are going to pour this energy into a reclamation of community. These creative currents and life forces and the mothering energy in and of itself includes Snow White, the Forsaken, and includes the Queen, the Ice Queen, that silence made of her until her clarity brought the fire that said, oh fuck no, let's rate this R. We're not going to do this to ourselves. We're going to come into our coherence. We're going to go beyond normal. We're going to expand outside of the lines. We know that behind the mind beats the heart of something much older, much more beautiful, that knows what beauty is, that tells us what beauty is. Intuition with mother, sleeping giant. Beauty. That's the resonance. Ding! If beauty resonates as a beauty standard, then you're looking for order, rank, and file. Where can I place myself? What can I do to be in proximity to power? The standard is power. It'll give you power. How can I be in proximity to it? How can I hold it? How can I wield it? How can I hold it over others? Mirror, mirror on the wall. You know what, the mirror, mirror on the wall? I could just do this all day long. Like every time our guides show me that, I like put my face in it, and it's like every single time I say mirror, mirror on the wall, the guide that is like, I guess, orchestrating the vision, I go, mirror, mirror on the wall, and I hear, go fuck yourself. like this is a very, I love that like all of our ancestral mothers are coming forward, and the first thing that they want to do is make sure that I know that we're going to rate this, judgment. Judgment card keeps coming out. Judgment. We got it all over the place. That we're going to rate judgment. We got judgment 3 times. Our ancestors, our grannies with their little granny caps, and they all want to bring their confessions forward. Yes, I was the Ice Queen, but I was also Snow White. Yes, I was Rapunzel, but I was also her mother, because she kept me in that castle because she knew damn well that if she put me into the world, that what was going to happen to me was what happened to her. So she kept me up there in that castle. So every single one of these things, when we have this judgment call here, and our grannies are saying, yes, we want to speak, we have wanted to speak these stories, not the fluffy, in compliance, but the pain of the deprivation of these people eating a full meal in front of me while they starve me every day. What that does to a soul. They want to speak it, and they want to make sure that I know that they want to curse. They want to say, son of a bitch. They don't want those parameters in place that can keep that holy rage from expressing. And so when you are looking at the mirror, right, and you are judging yourself against these standards, when you are looking at your progress of learning how to read, and you're not measuring up, in your achievements, because the achievements, you did it here, and now that's supposed to do that. And if it's not, but they can see it, but they're not going to see it because you're strong, right? You're strong, right? I love, like, this is a current, but this is an intense energy that we fall rank and file into, and so, generosity, 9 of Wands, like, when we go to heal this stuff, and this transformation and this adventure, I want you to think about your relationship to your wounds, and I want you to think about your relationship to your ancestors, and I want you to look at the traits that are expressing through you that emancipate you. the parts of you that are saying, I'm not going in the fucking forest, okay, bitch, I'm gonna be beautiful even if nobody else sees it, and this might be my cross to bear. I might need to figure out why this keeps happening. I might need to reckon with the fact that for whatever reason I don't see something about myself. Snow White, when she was her father's most precious golden child of the narcissist, couldn't see why everybody fucking hated her. She did not see it. Why does everyone treat me like shit? I am so happy to be alive. I show up with enthusiasm every single day. I have a whole plan of fun things for the whole court, and yet they hate my fucking guts. There must be something wrong with me. I don't know what it is. Mirror, mirror on the wall. You know, so when we really look at blindness, you know, Snow White's getting a bad deal, don't you think? Don't you think that this privilege of the father's adoration for 12 years, because then he has to use her as, you know, he has to actually, it's collateral. Like he's got something he's got to cultivate into an asset so that he has more machinery for his treaties. It's not really love, right? It's going to cost her. It's going to cost you too. It's going to cost all of us. That's what it is to look at these stories, honestly. That's what it is to take responsibility for our ancestors, because when we see the traits in us that are getting persecuted, we have to know it's because we are defiantly expressing our beauty, even if we don't understand what's going on. And so all of these mothers that are coming through and saying the dark mother archetypes need their voice so that they can rise up within you. So when you're looking in the mirror and when you're not seeing people reflect the beauty that you're bringing, you can say, I will bring the rebellion of knowing that this structure of oppression that has me in this fucked up position is not telling me a true story about who I am and what it means to bring my love, because I'm going to become a terrorist queen of this court when I get to the top of the totem pole and I look out on all of these people who withheld love from me and instead offered me no compassion. And I'm going to become a cold-hearted ruler where everybody else seems to have something in common that brings them together, that gives them community, which is my starvation, because I've been given the power. What the fuck is that power worth? Seriously, give it a good think, because one of the things that I learned about envy and how powerful it is like, I saw this vision through, it was an enslaved ancestor of somebody who I did a reading with, and she showed me the slave songs, like she brought me into this moment, like really, really beautiful. And then she showed me that there was a slave that was in the home that was also like a concubine. It was a horrible, like disgusting situation, and she was beautiful and she was hated, and she had so much power because all she needed to do in the early 6 o'clock in the morning, because she held something that wasn't even the beauty that the others saw. It was it was this cuteness that her 6 o'clock in the morning, her pillow face, and she's sleeping, and he saw this, and it melted something. And now when she says that one out there, you see her out there, I think she's doing something wrong. You better do something about it, because she has a voice, and they have a voice together, and they laugh together, and then they have something that isn't rape, and then isn't this isolation, and isn't this place with this man, and she doesn't know why, but she's doing something. She's doing something. It feels good. It feels like power, and she's hungry, and that's better than nothing, because it's almost love. We have to rewrite these stories, because it's not us against them. It's how do we find connection? How do we find ourselves? How do we emancipate ourselves? Because we are the soul in the field that connects, and we are the alienated favorite who has no voice whatsoever and no place for a voice. And no one wants to hear that voice, because that voice has said things before in moments of weakness that cost someone their life. And she doesn't know why her voice offends. this is doubly true with degrees of blindness that we call privilege, that go all the way up to the top of the ladder, to the king who sits, having been hollowed out when his ancestors looked at his future and said, that's for me. I don't care how you express, you're gonna express like I did. That's my nose, that's my hair. We're gonna make something of ourselves, and you're gonna get up in the morning and you're not gonna know your beauty. You're gonna know a mirror, and it's gonna be telling you all of the brokenness that came before, that didn't get expressed, that got expressed wrong, that wanted to sing, that never got to. And you're gonna do it. You're gonna do it this time, and you're not gonna get in the way because you'd rather paint. You're not gonna get in the way. You're gonna be like that over there, because I wanted that voice. So we have to like interrogate these aspects of ourselves that tell us that we can have something or we can't have something, that somebody has something and that we should have it, or we have something and nobody else has it. We gotta think about this chorus, because there are the parts of us that say, you are beautiful at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then there are the parts of us that are like, oh my gosh, she's out of order. Wow. Like, she's not holding it together here, and I can hear her conversation 2 aisles over, and well, you know, some people make sure that if I see her, I'm gonna look away real fast, because we know that that's out of order, and you need to hold yourself to a higher standard, right? Right? Because, and that's just the same person. Like, I did this today. my guys are channeling me for like a weird second, because I was judging somebody who was having a meltdown in the Marshalls or whatever the heck. I went in to get like a little thing of face oil, and there was someone just like losing it completely, and I sat there in my superiority, 3 of Swords. Meanwhile, I had this conversation privately. I was like really privileged to have a conversation with my tax person in private. And I did not have a better time of it. But why was I bringing envy to that whatever store aisle I was in? What the fuck was I doing with that? Except not acknowledging the part of me that actually probably would have benefited from somebody else around during that meltdown. And really, even if I did have the privilege of being by myself, I didn't also get the kind grandmother who was an aisle ahead and stopped to make sure that this woman like knew that she's been there before and it's gonna be okay. And honey, life is life, and let me tell you, this is not the end of the world. There's gonna be real trauma ahead, and you gotta be able to look at this like it's money. Because that's what life is. It's about priorities. It's about where do we put our value. It's about what do we let shake us to the ground. And so when we are evaluating, you know, and when we are judging and we are bringing this stuff into the world with us, where are we in the equation of intuition with mother? With mother. We're in the grocery store. Somebody's having a meltdown 2 aisles over. Where are we? Are we with mother? What does with mother mean? Well, with mother knows that you do not have the strength to help anybody today because you need mothering yourself. So what you're going to do is you're going to be with mother, and you're going to know that you're going to give this energy that is around you that's freaking out grace. You're going to make sure that when you walk by, you give her a look in the eyes that says, I know it's been, I've had days like that too, honey. You're not going to stop and talk. You don't have it because you're with mother. You know what you have to give, but what you can give is an acknowledgement. It is a glance of recognition. You might not have $1 to spare, but you can look that person who is begging in the eye and say, nothing whatsoever, but you're going to acknowledge that they exist by just making 2 seconds of eye contact and a nod, and then you're going to move past because you know there's desperation there that you're not going to bring yourself in orbit with. And you know that if it's going to cause you to have an interaction that you have no mothering for, because you're mothering yourself by knowing what you've got, then you might even not make that eye contact. But when we are making these decisions about what to bring into this world, and we know that we are in a mothering energy, and we know that we are mothering ourselves, and we know exactly what resources we have for our needs for that day, and we have it to spare, to stop the mom in the middle of the aisle at the Marshalls and say, honey, it's gonna be okay. I know this feels fucking horrible, but I've been there, and look at me now. You know, there's this trajectory, there's this ways in which we go through life, and I'm not here for a long time, but I'm here for a second to just say, it's gonna be okay, and you're not judged. Even if that's just a glance that you pass, then we're bringing this energy into the world that says, that story about the king and his shit show and the way that we have to show up in order, maybe that doesn't hold as much power as we thought. If you could see the old ladies in chorus with this, I was so surprised that that was the shuffle. I wish I could put that song. Maybe I'll figure it out one day and put it there. But I think that I want to sort of, it is probably time, like let me look at the, yeah, it's like 2 hours. I think I want to leave this here, and I think I want to leave us with this experience with our ancestors and the way that we feel about ourselves, that is less disempowered by what we don't have and the opportunities that we didn't get and the way that we can never meet that standard, and this slave world, man, you know, like we are where we are placed, and that is the reality of what our efforts have to offer. And when we can emancipate ourselves, you know, what we're doing when we go into the dark mother archetypes is less about condemning jealousy and envy and like, why don't you just express authentically? Like, it's so much less than that. Because yes, everywhere we go, there's some example of somebody personifying the consuming mother who, mirror, mirror on the wall, sees beauty elsewhere, and if she can't eat it, you know, is gonna have to exile it away and make sure that nobody knows that it's not hers. Like, you know, like we're not interrogating all of these things that come up in ourselves in order to condemn ourselves and position ourselves as like woke versus like blind, because believe me, everybody has blind spots. What we're doing is we're taking responsibility for ourselves, we're taking responsibility for our ancestors, and we look at what we're bringing into the world with ourselves. And when we think about presenting and holding and manifesting with the energy of mothering, it's emancipating mothering from some caretaking role where she is just the martyr who upholds everything for the family, even though she's starving to death. And her value diminishes with age for no reason, because her beauty is actually at 6 o'clock in the morning when she's pillow head and fluffy head. And beauty is not power in that way. What beauty actually is, what Aphrodite actually is the authentic gaze of the lover, and that's a completely subjective thing. It's not an objective anything. So the nature of what it is not as what is being advertised. And so, you know, we are going to have to interface with people who are embodying these shadows that say you are not in order. But the way that we tend to them, when we bring in the mother, when we let people be out of order, when we look at ourselves in the mirror and that voice comes that says you're unlovable, and we go da 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 da, we're in a fucked up context. And we'll find out why I feel that way about myself, but I know the fuck it's not true. So I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to have this relationship with the mirror. I'm not going to have this relationship with the way that I see other people out of order or in order. I am going to break the mold, going beyond normal. I'm going to look at this melancholy that's with me that says, you're done, it's over, you know, mirror, mirror. And you're going to say, ancestor that feels this way, you're carrying the energy of the evil eye, you're carrying the energy of envy. You feel like that I need this to survive. I don't need this to survive. I need love to survive. That's really accessible, because what beauty is something ineffable, and you're not gonna hurt me anymore. Maybe I want to adorn myself differently. Maybe I want to do something with the shape of me, my hair. Maybe I want to play with things, and I want to think about my expression and how that unique mating dance. And I see this mating dance that our guys are showing me. It's like a bird, and he's like, you know, you're gonna do your mating dance. You're gonna do it. You're gonna get out there. You're gonna fluff it up. But that is not there. There's no part of that. Not even a single part of that experience. Not from the beginning all the way to the end. That is mean. Unless there's a part of yourself that is in shadow, in the form of what takes care of you and what informs your sense of your worth and your sense of your value, that it has some distortion. There's some stories. You have all the features of the king's daughter, and around you is a part of you who has the hair and the nails and the hand shape of the stepmother, who wasn't at a home. And so you took the punishment of his sins on your body, and you wore it into the world, and they called it beauty. And you didn't really have a good experience, and you don't know why. But when we break the spell, it's because we go into the story, not from a place of placing ourselves as superior. I really feel for Snow White because, like, you know, like that bitch did that to me too. Without looking at, like, but I just hang out with, like, the dwarves. Like, we're, you know, like, I'm just a girl's, like, I'm a guy's girl. Like, and I'm not making fun of anybody, but, like, that, our ancestors hate that person. And I also know that we were all that way, like, probably, like, 12 or 13. And even if we weren't that way, we were some kind of that way. We had some way in which we didn't know what we were looking at when we were blind. And how that blindness expressed itself ricocheted. And these ancestors that torture us do so from their own rage, their own displacement, and in the lifespan with a conscious mind and a conscious perspective and the power to make material. You take dominion over those energies, and you force them into a new story, or you banish them from your experience in that way. And the way that you banish is you don't send something into the forest. It's never going to express again. You better turn to stone. No. Athena needed a mother when her temple was violated, and the part of herself that she was most sacred with was hurt. She needed a mother that said, you're not going to turn to stone, honey. Listen, you feel this way. You're enraged. Every man that looks at you like that, everyone that looks at you like that with desire, I know you want to make sure that they don't exist for you, that you block them out, that you don't give them that energy, that you don't let them near you, that you put up that wall. You better not ever let this express again. She needed a mother. She needed a mother. You need to bring the mother into that story that says, hey, Athena, you really love this part of yourself. You really love her. You loved her. She was yours. You were hers. Like, this was wrong. This happened in your home. This happened in your sanctuary. This happened in the place where your holiness was held. I know you're angry, but you are going to heal her. You are not going to turn her to stone, because that is not how we let this story end. Because we're here to bring meaning. We're here to bring emancipation. And we're here to do that to ourselves, within ourselves. We're here to be that mother that sees ourselves as both Athena and Medusa and knows what to do about this, so that neither has to be exiled from themselves. Neither has to be defined by the story that captivated them and held them captive and determined their expression forevermore. Hell fucking no. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. I'm going to play that song. I want somebody, one of you who is a musician maybe, will you take that song and do some like house music rendition and like hook it up nice with like layers of like divine feminine rage? Like, let's take it and do something, because, that's totally separate, nothing to do with me. But like when we think about the influences of our guides and what they have to offer us, there are always going to be the energies that are the emancipators, and then there are always going to be the energies that are mirror, mirror on the wall. Look at you. Who's not the prettiest of them all? Look at mirror, mirror on the wall. Who is not the prettiest of them all? Like, who? Come on. So where we leave this reading with the Dark Mothers, and we enter this series with the Dark Mothers, is we're going to curse a lot in here. And we're also going to stop looking at each other in that way where, are we Snow White or are we the Dark Mother? I would never. You have ancestors that did. And it wasn't because they deserve to be condemned by your beauty. And they don't have it. And that's why they're so mean. No, that they are what you become unless you deal with them in a way that is loving and mothering. And that doesn't mean putting up with something, looking at you in the mirror and saying you're ugly. It means da na 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 na, sleepyhead, da 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 da. I'm not gonna take on that attitude, na 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 na, because my sleepyhead is cute. Ba da 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 da. I'm gonna sing that. I want to go like jam out. I want to do that. I want like house music to that. But yeah, let's leave it there. Welcome into the cave of the Dark Mother, where the secret is you are her. So we're gonna leave it there, and I'll see you guys again next week.